the status of the decision on the provision of Respreeza drug to Alpha-1 patients with the Minister for Health. Deputy Brassil.
Thank you, Corla, and I welcome the opportunity to once again raise this very important issue. I understand that Deputy Sherlock put it down as a topical yesterday. It wasn't selected, so and he can't be here today. So I just want to acknowledge that. Minister, since we last spoke on this issue, unfortunately, where we'd hoped that we'd make some progress, I think we've regressed somewhat in that the HSE have decided during the summer not to reimburse the drug for various reasons, which I'll get back to in a second. And CSL Behring, who have been providing the drug on a compassionate access programme to 21 patients, I understand that 17 of them are within our jurisdiction, and that has been withdrawn as of the end of September. Now, we've written to you, both Micheál Martin, Billy Kelleher and myself have written to you on foot of this decision, and the reply we got was interesting, where you outline through the HSE that they suggest that the drugs, it hasn't proven itself to be clinically efficient. And this is where the big problem for me is, Minister, because I have met with the patients who are getting this drug. I've met with most of the 21 of them. They've made presentations to us in the AV room. And, you know, I'd ask you to talk to John Hannon down in Mallow, who has been getting the drug. That man was breathing with the aid of an oxygen tank before he got the drug. He had to retire early from his job as an engineer, which he was very good at, but unfortunately couldn't function. Since he's been taking that drug, he's functioning as a normal human being. I'd ask you to speak to James Coffey down in Killorglin. James has the combined condition of Alpha-1 deficiency and panniculitis, which rendered him basically bedridden for 2 out of every 4 weeks and in hospital for months upon months of each year. 7 years ago, James received the Respreeza double dose, which deals with the issue, and he's been living a normal life since. And again, I might revert back to that particular situation, because there are 2 other individuals in the country who suffer from the condition of combined Alpha-1 deficiency and panniculitis, and they are receiving a sister drug of Respreeza called Prolastin, and they are receiving it from the HSE, and they are getting on with their lives. And I think we have to do the same for James. But we are caught in a dilemma. CSL are providing the information. The HSE, in good faith, I'm sure, are saying that the information isn't sufficient. The cost of the drug is another issue that we have to come to terms with. But in the meantime, we have 21 people, 17 of them in our jurisdiction, whose lives are being affected. And that is who I represent. That is who I am trying to get reimbursement for the drug over the line, to let these people get on with their lives. And there seems to be another bit of confusion in that the HSE haven't been formally informed. The drug has been provided to the Alpha-1 Foundation, which Professor McIlvany is involved with. The Alpha-1 Foundation administer and distribute the drug, and they have been informed that the Compassionate Access Programme has come to an end. So, lest there be any ambiguity on that one, as I speak, I have asked the Alpha-1 Foundation to contact your office directly and confirm to you and confirm to the HSE that this drug is no longer available as of the 30th of September, so we really have 1 week to try and sort something out, in particular for the 21 people, of which 17 are in our jurisdiction, to resolve it. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Corla. I want to thank Deputy John Brassil for raising this important issue, and I appreciate the sincerity with which he approaches it, and I think we can all agree in this House that medicines obviously play a very vital role in improving the overall health and well-being of Irish patients, and the pipeline for new medicines is indeed very strong. It's estimated that in the region of 45 new molecules are due to receive market authorisation in Europe each year over the next 5 years. It's vital that all new medicines are thoroughly assessed to determine both their clinical and cost-effective value so as to ensure that resources are committed to medicines that deliver a high clinical and cost-effective return. The HSE has carefully considered the pricing and reimbursement of Respreeza through its decision-making process, which was aligned with the statutory criteria set out in the Health, Pricing and Supply of Medical Goods Act 2013. I'd like to highlight the importance of that Act. That was an Act that this House passed to give powers to the HSE and not the Minister for Health to decide what drugs to reimburse and not. And I don't mean this in relation to Deputy Brassil directly, but if deputies in this House have a difficulty with that, well, deputies in this House should come forward with an alternative. But that is the law of the land. It's the law that was passed by this House. The HSE has the statutory power, not the Minister of the day, to decide to reimburse or not reimburse. And I think that is important, that as legislators we accept the responsibility that we have in that regard and the legal reality. Following an extensive review process over the past 18 months, the HSE has written to CSL, the manufacturer of Respreeza, advising them that the HSE will not support reimbursement at this time. The HSE informed me they were unable to recommend Respreeza as there is not enough evidence to suggest that patients will derive a clinically meaningful benefit from augmentation therapy with the human inhibitor. Again, not my view, but the clinical view put forward by the HSE. The HSE also considered its cost-effectiveness and deemed that the current price was not a cost-effective use of resources. And I appreciate the point Deputy Brassil makes in this regard, because I think many of us in this House have heard that this drug is being provided at a much cheaper cost, to other countries, and it is pretty despicable that any drug company would try and exploit our patients or our taxpayers for a higher price than they're demanding in other countries as well. I am very aware and very conscious that there are a number of patients on the Compassionate Access Scheme for Respreeza, which is operated by the drug company. Following recent media reports, it appears that the company could be considering terminating this scheme. However, no formal notification has been received by the HSE from the manufacturer of its intention to discontinue access to the scheme. And I take the point Deputy Brassil makes in terms of the Alpha Foundation, but I would suggest that this company should come out and make a statement in relation to this and in relation to why if they are intending to do so, why they would behave in such an unethical way. Because, as I've stated previously, and I think it's something, and I hope it's something that all politicians in this House would agree on, there should be no link between compassionate access schemes and reimbursement schemes. And indeed, that's not just my view. If you look at the World Medical Association Declaration of Helsinki, Ethical Principles for Medical Research Involving Human Subjects, it indicates that in medical research involving people, informed consent requires that these subjects are adequately informed of a range of criteria, including post-study provisions, and that post-study provisions should be provided for in advance of a clinical trial. Also, in fairness to our own Irish Pharmaceutical Healthcare Association, they're very clear publicly in their view that there should be no link between clinical trials and reimbursement. So there's absolutely no reason why these patients should not receive the drug. And I would hope that, whilst rightly raising it in this House, that we'd all call on the company to comply with what is normal ethical practice in relation to decoupling clinical trials, and that's what they should be doing, decoupling clinical trials from the reimbursement process. I have requested and directed that the HSE seek assurances from the relevant hospital, Beaumont in this case, that appropriate care arrangements are in place in the event that any access programme is discontinued in an unethical fashion, and that appropriate guidelines have been and continue to be followed in relation to all aspects of the clinical trial and access programme. It is the responsibility of both the company and what is known as the investigator, in other words the clinician, to ensure that they have considered and made arrangements for their patients, including in circumstances where the product is not reimbursed by the HSE. It is, as I've said, in my view, completely inappropriate and unethical for any company to link reimbursement decisions to compassionate access schemes. And when I attend roundtable meetings with other EU health ministers and drug companies and drugs industry, they're at pains to tell us that there's no link between reimbursement and clinical trials. And I don't want a situation where they are using as leverage human beings who are concerned about their health and well-being. So I genuinely appreciate the Deputy's issue and concern. I would hope that in the next week we could all work together to ask this company to behave in a normal, ethical way. I don't think that's too much for any of us to expect.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy President,
thank you, Minister. And again, I have no issue with the methodology by which Professor Barry operates. And I've met him specifically on this issue, and he has told me specifically that if the company come forward with more detailed clinical information, that he will look at it. The problem that I have, as I stated in my earlier contribution, was that I can see by meeting the patients who are getting it, the obvious clinical benefit. So there's something falling between the stools here. Are the company not submitting enough data? Are they not presenting it in such a way that allows Professor Barry to get it over the line? We've mentioned reimbursement. We are led to believe that the cost of reimbursement offered to some countries is a lot lower than what has been offered in Ireland. All those are issues. But at the end of the day, Minister, next week, and I have absolutely no doubt about this, regardless of how poorly the company may have informed or not informed, as the case may be, the issue is that those patients are going to lose their drug. I'm asking you, Professor Barry, John Hennessy, who heads up primary care in the HSE, Professor McAvally and the Alpha-1 Foundation, and CSL Behring, to sit around the table and trash out a solution. If not the long-term solution over the provision of the drug to the general population, specifically for those who are currently on the Compassionate Access Programme. We need to do something for those patients. I mentioned one individual who has the double condition of Alpha-1 and paniculatus. That is so critical for that particular individual. He will be in a hospital bed in a week's time if his drug is withdrawn from him. The likes of John Hannon and his colleagues that I've met with, their lives have been changed. And I feel it my responsibility to ensure that they continue to get the medication they need. So I ask you, Minister, to keep this live. The next week is absolutely critical. Call all the relevant parties together and get a resolution. I mean, it doesn't matter to me that CSL are a 1.2 billion profit company per year. It doesn't matter to me that they have endless resources. It matters to me that the patients in our jurisdiction, the people that I represent, get the drug that allows them to live a normal life. And I trust in you and your department to make sure that heads are knocked together to allow these people the access that they need and live a normal life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.
Final 2 minutes.
The well-being of Irish patients and our citizens is something you and I absolutely share in our desire to work together on, and something all of us in this House want to see. But what we can't see, what we cannot see, is a drug company behave in an unethical fashion and blackmail the taxpayer and effectively, therefore, blackmail patients. As Minister for Health, each and every week we see more and more drugs becoming available. This is good. Drugs that can save patients' lives, that can make patients' lives better. But we cannot have a drug company that is breaking all the normal rules. The Irish Pharmaceutical Healthcare Association, the representative body for drug companies in this country, does not behave or believe in behaving in this way. There is not meant to be, internationally or nationally, a link between clinical trials, compassionate access programmes, which the company puts in place, and the HSE reimbursement process. What I've done is I have directed the HSE to make contact with the hospital and the clinician responsible here to make sure that individual care plans are put in place for each and every one of the patients. My concern absolutely is for 17 patients in this jurisdiction and 21 patients on the island of Ireland. I would, though, as you have, suggest that the company should come forward with more information. The company should reflect on the price they're seeking in this jurisdiction versus other jurisdiction, and that should happen. But whilst that's happening, patients should not be used as pawns. And I know you make the point that it mightn't be particularly relevant to the patients, but it is important for the record of this House that CSL is a $45 billion company, sales in 2016 of $6 billion according to its annual reports, net profits in that year after tax of $1.2 billion, their CEO paid salaries and bonus of $8.1 million, and the 9 other directors of the management team paid amounts ranging from $1.5 million to $3.2 million each in 2016. That's all in their annual report. Surely to God they can continue a clinical trial for 17 of our patients. And I would ask for cross-party support in sending out that message very clearly from this House, whilst absolutely then expecting the HSE would engage in any further information that's presented to them. I think that is very important. So I'll certainly keep in touch with you, Deputy.
Thank you indeed, Minister. Thank you.